At 11:46 p.m., Myeongdong Sky Pavilion was almost empty. The last dinner guests had left behind half-finished bottles of wine, folded napkins, and the lingering sound of piano music from the lounge. Adizwa Falad moved quietly between tables, gathering crystal glasses onto a silver tray. Everyone called her Sua. To the restaurant staff, she was simply the Nigerian waitress who always volunteered for late shifts and spent her breaks reading impossibly thick textbooks. Tonight was no different. In the staff room, she sat alone beneath fluorescent light with a Korean cardiovascular pharmacology book open across her knees. Another waitress leaned against the doorway. "You actually understand that?" Sua smiled without looking up. "Some of it." The woman laughed. "I'd rather read tax law." Sua turned the page. Nobody knew she had once spent nights studying medicine instead of wine lists. Nobody knew she had completed medical school. Nobody knew she had come to Seoul for a prestigious cardiovascular research placement before her father's death forced her life into a different direction. She preferred it that way. Explanations were exhausting. A bell chimed from the service corridor. The restaurant captain appeared. "Private Salon 1. Reopen it immediately." "For who?" "Kong Junseok." That name changed the room. Staff straightened. Security appeared near the elevators. 5 minutes later, Junseok entered with 3 men in dark suits and 2 physicians. He was younger than Suo expected. Tall, composed, perfectly dressed. The kind of man who never needed to ask for attention. Suo served tea without staring. Then Professor Yoon Doyoung placed a medical folder on the table beside him and left it open. Sua saw only a few lines. A medication list. Recent symptoms. Laboratory results. Her hand slowed around the teapot. One number didn't fit. Then she saw another. Her medical mind woke before she could stop it. Professor Yoon spoke confidently. "The palpitations are increasing because the current dose is insufficient." Dr. Beck Seonjil frowned. "He's also had more dizziness, which supports increasing the cardiovascular medication." Sua poured mineral water. She heard Junseok say, "How much?" "Double tonight." Her hand stopped, only for a second. But Junseok noticed everything. "Something wrong." Sua resumed pouring. "No, sir. You stopped." Restaurant captain Go Un-chai, standing near the doorway, looked alarmed. Sua lowered the bottle. "I shouldn't interfere." Junseok glanced at the folder, then at her. "That wasn't my question." Professor Yoon looked irritated. "She's serving dinner." Sua took a quiet breath. "One of the medications listed there," she gestured carefully without touching the chart, "may not combine safely with the dosage change you just suggested." Silence. Professor Yoon stared at her. "Excuse me?" "I apologize." He leaned back. "Are you medically trained?" Captain Go Un-chai stepped forward. "Sua, enough." Professor Yoon gave a small laugh. "You're a waitress." Sua met his eyes calmly. "Tonight, yes." That answer changed the room. Junseok leaned slightly forward. "Tonight?" Sua immediately regretted saying it. But Dr. Beck was already reaching for the folder. "Which medication?" She named it. Beck checked the chart, then checked again. His expression changed. "This prescription came from the Singapore specialist." Professor Yoon frowned. "I wasn't told it had been adjusted." Sua said nothing. The problem was suddenly obvious. 2 doctors. 2 countries. 2 treatment plans. No one had reconciled them. Junseok did not praise her. He did not immediately believe her either. "Call the pharmacy," he said. Dr. Beck did. Then he contacted the international consultant listed in the file. The conversation lasted less than 4 minutes. When it ended, Beck looked toward Junseok. "Do not increase the dose." Professor Yoon folded his arms. "This only proves the regimen requires review. It doesn't prove the medication caused his episodes." Sua nodded. "It doesn't." Everyone looked at her. She continued, "But increasing it before reviewing the full medication history could make the problem worse." Junseok watched her closely. There was no satisfaction in her face. "No smagnis." No performance. Just concern. He asked quietly, "Where did you learn this?" Sua hesitated. "Medical school." The room went still. Captain Go Un-chai looked as though someone had dropped a wine bottle onto marble. Professor Yun stared. Junseok's expression became unreadable. Which medical school? Sua lifted the tray again. With respect, sir, I'm still working. For the first time that evening, Junseok smiled. Very slightly. Then finish your shift. But as she walked away, he looked toward Park Giseok. Find out who she is. By noon the following day, a complete background report rested on Junseok's desk. Adizwa Falad. Medical degree. Postgraduate clinical training. Cardiovascular research placement in Seoul. Outstanding evaluations. Then suddenly, withdrawal.
No misconduct.
No failed examinations. No disciplinary hearing. She simply disappeared from the program. Junseok read the file twice. That evening, he returned to Myeryong Sky Pavilion. Sua was polishing glasses when Captain Go approached. Private Salon 3. Sua sighed. Again. Junseok sat alone this time. No doctors.
No advisors.
He gestured toward the chair opposite him. I'm working. So am I. She remained standing. He placed her resume on the table. You were a doctor. I still am. You left medicine.
No.
Her answer was immediate. I left a program. He waited. Eventually she told him. Her father had died unexpectedly. Her younger siblings needed financial support. The fellowship stipend had been insufficient. Licensing and immigration complications followed. Restaurant work paid immediately. Medicine did not. Junseok asked, Do you want to go back? Sua looked toward the medical textbook visible inside her work bag. I never left medicine. She tapped the book. Medicine left my timetable. For some reason, that answer stayed with him. 3 days later, Sua arrived at the Kong residence expecting a brief consultation. Instead, she found an entire private medical wing. Diagnostic equipment. Private pharmacy.
Recovery suite.
Telemedicine walls. A rotating schedule of specialists from 4 countries. She looked at Dr. Beck. How many physicians manage his care? 12. Sua stared. 12. Beck almost looked embarrassed. Within 2 hours, she understood the problem. Junseok didn't lack expertise. He was drowning in it. One cardiologist adjusted medication. A neurologist added another. A Singapore endocrinologist recommended supplements. A sports medicine specialist changed exercise protocols. A private pharmacist updated timing. No one owned the full picture. Sua spread printed records across a long conference table. Medication changes here. Symptoms here. Travel here. Lab results here. She began connecting dates. A pattern emerged. Junseok watched from the doorway. What do you see? She looked up. A man with excellent doctors. He waited. And none of them are treating the same patient. Beck frowned. Sua pointed toward the scattered records. They're each treating their own version of you. The room went quiet. Junseok looked at the 12 sets of notes surrounding her. For months, everyone had searched for one mysterious disease. Sua saw something simpler. The problem might not be what his doctors knew. It might be what none of them knew about each other. For the next 4 days, Sua rebuilt Kong Junseok's medical history from scratch. Not as 12 separate specialists saw him. As one patient. Every prescription change received a date. Every episode of dizziness, confusion, sweating, and palpitations went onto the same timeline. Travel schedules were added. Meals. Exercise. Laboratory results. Dr. Beck watched the pattern emerge. This started 3 days after Singapore. Sua nodded. And worsened after Professor Yun changed the cardiovascular medication. Beck stared at the chart. How did we miss this? You didn't. Sua looked around the conference table. Everyone saw a piece of it. Nobody was responsible for seeing all of it. From the doorway, Junseok listened. Money had given him 12 exceptional doctors. It had not given him one coherent system. Sua closed the folder. You don't need another specialist. Junseok raised an eyebrow. What do I need? Someone making your specialists speak to each other. At 3:12 the following morning, Sua heard something fall. She and Dr. Beck had been working late in the medical wing when a security officer shouted from the corridor. Mr. Khan. They ran. Junseok was on the floor beside his study. Conscious but confused. His shirt was damp with sweat. Beck immediately knelt beside him. Junseok, can you hear me? Sua didn't interfere with treatment. She ran for the consolidated record. When was his last medication? A security officer answered. Just after midnight. Sua searched the timeline. Her fingers stopped. Dr. Beck. He looked up. She turned the tablet toward him. The recent prescription adjustment. The timing. The previous episodes. Beck understood. Call the ambulance. Bring his medication pack. Everything moved quickly after that. At the hospital, emergency physicians stabilized Junseok while Beck provided the complete medication history immediately. No searching through 12 disconnected files. No calling 3 countries before understanding what had changed. Hours later, Beck found Junseok awake. Sua's timeline saved us a lot of time tonight. Junseok looked through the glass. Sua was sitting outside with her head against the wall, exhausted. For the second time, she hadn't performed some miracle. She had simply noticed what everyone else had failed to connect. And somehow that was more impressive. 3 days later, Junseok summoned Sua. He slid a folder across his desk. She opened it. Chief of Staff, Executive Medical Operations. Sua looked up. You're serious? Completely. You do remember I'm not licensed to independently practice medicine in Korea? I'm not hiring you to practice medicine. He explained the role. Medical coordination, records integration, specialist communication, emergency documentation, travel health planning, research briefs. Sua closed the folder.
No.
Junseok actually blinked.
No. No.
Why? Because this feels like gratitude wearing a job title. His expression sharpened. It isn't. Then prove it. She pushed the folder back. Define the position properly. Establish qualifications. Interview candidates. Junseok stared at her. You're asking me to make it harder for you to get the job. Yes. A slow smile appeared. You're extraordinarily inconvenient. I've been told. 2 weeks later, the position officially opened. The candidates were formidable. Former hospital administrators, private healthcare directors, medical operations executives. Sua applied alongside them. Her interview panel included Dr. Beck, Park Giziak, and an independent healthcare executive. Beck asked the final question. You have 12 internationally respected physicians. How do you manage 12 strong opinions? Sua answered immediately. I don't manage opinions. I manage information. She placed her proposal on the table. 1 verified medication record. 1 emergency protocol. 1 current treatment summary. 1 person accountable for reconciling every change. Park leaned forward. And if a famous specialist refuses? Then fame doesn't get to create a blind spot.
Silence.
Sua continued. The patient shouldn't have to become unconscious before his doctors discover they weren't talking to each other. Beck looked down, hiding a smile. 3 days later, Sua received the call. The position was hers. Not because Kong Junseok owed her, because she had built the best system. 6 months later, the Kong medical office was almost unrecognizable. Every specialist worked from 1 verified record. Medication changes were reconciled before implementation. Travel protocols were prepared in advance. Emergency information could be retrieved in seconds. Dr. Beck finally knew what Junseok's physicians in Tokyo, Singapore, and Seoul were doing without chasing 12 separate conversations. And Sua had returned to cardiovascular research through an approved academic pathway. One evening, she sat in her office reviewing charts when Junseok appeared.
He placed something on her desk.
A menu. Sua stared at it. Myeryong Sky Pavilion? Yes. I carried these for 11 months. I remember. She looked suspiciously at him. What do you want? Dinner. With whom?
Me.
She laughed. You could have just asked. I've discovered you're unusually difficult to ask anything. Interesting observation from a man who offered me an executive position before offering me dinner. Junseok pulled out the chair opposite her. I thought I'd correct the order. And who's serving? I am. Sua raised an eyebrow. You. I've negotiated international shipping agreements. That doesn't qualify you to carry soup. I'll take the risk. She closed the chart. 1 dinner. Junseok smiled. Accepted. As they walked toward the elevator, Sua glanced back at the medical office. Months earlier, people had known her only as the waitress who read medical textbooks during her breaks. But the uniform had never defined her. Neither did the new title. Junseok had first noticed her because she stopped pouring water when two numbers didn't belong together. Everything afterward came from the same instinct. Look carefully. Ask questions. Connect what others leave separated. Sometimes extraordinary talent isn't absent. Sometimes it's standing beside your table holding a silver tray, waiting for someone to notice.